Hey guys, this is Team Pile Driver. Have you ever wondered why CU Go Trip participants should study nonverbals? Well, hey, good thing you're here, because we're gonna freaking tell you.
Every year, Cornerstone University sends students out on a variety of Go trips to locations like Memphis, Chicago, Kosovo, Jamaica, India, and Zambia. Going on these trips can be a great opportunity for students to have their eyes opened to different cultures and ways of life. However, because these students are traveling to cultures they are not familiar with, they might not be they might not always know the appropriate and inappropriate nonverbal communication to use. Our team proposes that CU establish a curriculum for students who sign up to go on Grow trips to teach them about the power and usage of nonverbals in the culture which they are visiting. Students who better understand the culture they are visiting will be better equipped to serve them well. To back up our proposal, we looked at two different studies done by two teams of acclaimed scientists on the impact of nonverbal communication and its variation among different cultures.
Our first study is titled Cracking the Nonverbal Code Intercultural Competence and Gesture Recognition Across Cultures. So, the overall experiment for study number one, researchers wanted to see if the length of stay in a certain country would impact an individual's ability to recognize gestures. The researchers hypothesized two different things. The first one was there will be a positive relationship for non natives between length of stay in a foreign setting and gesture recognition accuracy. The researchers also hypothesized that the ability to accurately distinguish between valid and invalid gestures in a foreign culture will be associated with higher levels of perceived intercultural communication competence assessed by A. Non natives themselves and B. Native observers. There were 562 participants within this study. The participants were business students from a university in the western U.S. Within the participants were 285 native born Americans and 223 non native students. So the students took a GRT test, which stands for Gesture Recognition Task. The GRT test was administered in a large classroom where students watched a video of an actor showing 28 different nonverbal gestures. The students would have to decide whether or not the gestures were fake or not. The results of the study showed that for 19 of the 27 gestures, natives were more accurate than non natives with least marginal significance. Afterwards, the non native participants filled out a questionnaire that addressed three things. The first was their level of intercultural communication. For example, a question about this would say, it is often hard for me to understand the subtleties and nuances of everyday communication in the US. The second thing they assessed was their level of satisfaction in the new culture. An example of a statement like this would say, I am very satisfied with my progress in my courses at school in this new culture. And the third thing they assessed was their general level of comfort abroad. And this would look like, I feel more confident with people from my native culture than I do with Americans. The sample size for this test was there were 562 undergraduate students within the business division at a large university in the western U.S. Participated in taking the GRT test. Again, within the participants were 285 native born Americans, 223 non native students. The large amount of participants will contribute to the reliability of the study, along with the fact that it will give experimenters more variation between results. So, the assignment of subjects. These students participated in the study as a voluntary classroom activity. The voluntary nature of the experiment increases reliability. However, the students who volunteered could have had a bias toward wanting to be in the experiment compared to a group of participants who were chosen at random. For the variables for the experiment, the independent variable was the type of gestures and whether they are real or fake. The dependent variables were the native students and non native students' responses, along with the non native students' length of time in the country. Overall, the students participated in the experiment in a large classroom.
The results of the study found that for 19 of the 27 gestures, natives were more accurate than non-natives with least marginal significance. There were 7 gestures with no significant differences between the native and non-natives. Even in the absence of the 7 gestures, natives still outperformed non-natives. The results showed an overall positive correlation between length of stay in a foreign country and gesture recognition, and it also showed that the higher perceived intercultural communication competence is assessed by non-natives themselves and other natives had a positive association with gesture recognition accuracy. The information allowed for the replication of the test. The test used the experiment are highly repeatable. The study provided all the necessary details to replicate the same gestures that were shown to participants, as well as the questions that were used to measure volunteers' intercultural communication competencies. The anecdotal evidence of the test showed that both of the tests in the study were conducted based off a 7-point Likert type scale. So a 1 is strongly agree and 7 is strongly disagree questions. So there is no formal anecdotal evidence, i.e. testimonies, stories, or photos, used in the study to produce answers. Peer review. This article was published on May 1st, 2005 in the Journal of Cross-Cultural Psychology. The Journal of Cross-Cultural Psychology for over 50 years has provided a leading interdisciplinary forum for psychologists, sociologists, and other researchers who study relations between culture and behavior. The journal is edited and reviewed by Deborah L. Best of Wake Forest University, along with a team of other associate editors from various international universities. So the implications of the study has on Go Trips. The implications of the study shows that for more effective interactions between CU students and foreign people on Go Trips, training should be conducted. This training will show if the students can properly use gestures and nonverbal communication to reduce confusion, especially among students and others who speak different languages. As students themselves and native instructors rate them as having high intercultural communication competencies, then they are more likely to avoid confusion and correctly communicate using gestures. The study showed that the length of time in other foreign countries or cultures correlates with more effective nonverbal communication. Training students ahead of the trip with people native or highly familiar with those cultures will ready them to have a better understanding of proper gestures to use to avoid confusion.
The second study we looked at was called Cross-Cultural Differences in Recognizing Effect from Body Posture. There were two parts to this study. The first was identifying body's posture. The study's goal was to see what the difference is between each culture's posture when experiencing 4 different emotions: anger, fear, happiness, and sadness. In this study, 25 Japanese, 25 Sri Lankans, and 20 Caucasian Americans were participating in a test that was conducted online, where they used computer avatars to create a non-gender, non-culturally specific person in an attempt to eliminate bias, and also eliminate the facial expressions to solely focus on the posture. Each of the participants looked at these different figures, as you can see on the right, and analyzed what emotion they were feeling. The second part of the experiment was measuring the intensity of the emotion. The aim of the study was to assess the intensity according to the intensity value, i.e. a number from 1 being the lowest to 5 being the highest, and how the observers associated it in the 3 different cultures. Within the samples, they were shown 21 postures for angry, 19 for fear, 15 for happy, and 16 for sad. Subsequently, to better qualify which differences occurred between the cultures, for each emotional category, they used a post hoc test and bona fide correction in order to validate their research.
The sample size for the second study were that the participants consisted of 25 Japanese representing the Asian culture, 25 Sri Lankans representing the Indian cultures, and 20 Caucasian Americans representing Western cultures. The American participants were born and raised in the U.S. with a heritage dating back at least 2 generations. Ancestry of the Americans were non-Asian and non-Hispanic in all but 1 case. The Japanese and Sri Lankan observers were all within a similar age range and came from a similar educational background and career. The age range amongst the Americans was much greater, as was the career status, while the educational level was similar to that of the other cultures. Researchers expressed regret for not having even sample sizes because of their inability to have found enough American participants. Assignment of subjects. In this experiment, the subjects were not subdivided into groups. Each subject observed a randomized set of actions varying in culture. The series of observations were in an online format. However, the test subjects made the observation in the lab in Japan.
For the controlled variables, our independent variable was looking at the different actors and subjects from the three cultures, Sri Lankan, Japanese, and American, and the dependent variable was their ability to recognize emotion based off the cultural perceptions. The results showed that the three cultures obtained a moderate level of agreement when judging posture according to a set of predefined emotional categories. This showed evidence to indicate that emotions are both universal and culturally specific. The Japanese and Sri Lankan observers recognized emotions as well, or even better, as the U.S. recognized negative emotions as well as, or even better than the U.S. observers. Japanese also tended to rate emotions at a higher intensity than did the others.
Information allowing for replication for the second study. Yes, we believe it can be replicated. All of their steps were detailed enough for other scientists to go through and replicate the experiment. A few problems were finding the right people and having the best technology available that hurt the experiment in the long run. The problem the study had was the sample size having an inconsistent amount of subjects for each culture. If the experiment were to be conducted again in the correct ways, the experiment could be done more accurately.
The anecdotal evidence of the experiment did include several graphs and charts noting the differences in response to the varied avatar pictures. In each part of the experiment, it showed the actions seen by participants and a graph of the responses. Relating it back to the bias, we believe the bias could be as follows. The collection of the set of postures should have included relatively equal numbers of actors from each of the cultures in order to it have been more credible. For this study, it was difficult for them to find enough Sri Lankan and American actors as the study was conducted in Japan. There was also a chest sensor issue with the actors, and it could have not picked up some of the emotions that were in the posture, and it could have been proved problematic for the results.
Proof of peer review for study 2. This experiment was funded by grants and aid for scientific research from the Japanese Society for the Promotion of Science, granted to Nadia Bianchi Birdhouse. Andrea Kleinsmith and Ravindra De Silva were from the Database Systems Laboratory at the University of Atsu Atsu Wakamatsu. Nadia Bianchi Birdhouse is from UCL Interaction Center at the University College London, and also Nadia Bianchi Birdhouse worked with both universities. Applications for Go trips for the second study. This study proves useful in showing how different cultures perceive a variety of actions, although in the study they found that in some aspects cultures view emotions similarly. They also found that there were differences in the perceptions of the actions and emotions displayed. For example, we see in the study that in the Japanese culture, because of their background, they tended to rate less exaggerated emotions with more intensity. Being able to understand and perceive that others may interpret students' reactions and emotions differently can help them better interact with other cultures and show more understanding and hospitality within the cultures they visit. Thank you for listening.
This is
LaBove.
Levine.
Lyle.
Locklear, and we're Team Pile Driver.